Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ask that you please be seated. Thank you for coming to the Brazos City Council Tuesday, June 2nd, 2015 meeting. Tonight we do have a public hearing agenda. We have 4 items on the agenda. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councillor Striplin?
Here.
Councillor Wood?
Here.
Councillor Brown? Here. Councillor Starnes?
Here.
Councillor Whiteside?
Here.
Councillor Bowles?
Here.
Councillor Boone?
Here.
I call the Brazos City Council public hearing to order. First item is a resolution to declare various weeded lots to be a public nuisance and ordinary abatement per Title 11, Chapter 67, Code of Alabama 1975 as amended. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this item? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed on that item. Item number 2 is a resolution to grant a retail beer on or off premises and a retail wine on or off premises license to Private Pizza Kitchen doing business as Midtown Pizza. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this item? Yes, sir. Come to the microphone.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. State your name and address for the clerk's record, please.
Will Meacham in 3567 Wiley Road in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
36106.
Go ahead.
I'm looking to open my second location up, Midtown Pizza Kitchen. I've got a current location in Montgomery. We're going to be a family-oriented restaurant. Should fit in good with the city. It's what we do currently with our current model. Looking to sell beer and wine, and that'll be all the alcohol.
Okay. Does any council members have any questions or comment for Mr. Meacham? Mr. Meacham?
Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir, I do. Normally, a restaurant has just on-premise license, and I was wondering what was the on and off for.
My understanding is the ABC board now issues on and off premise. I don't plan on selling any off premise. Everything that I sell will be consumed on site.
All right, thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Declare the public hearing closed on item number 2. Item number 3 is an ordinance to zone property located at Glenbrook subdivision to R3, single-family residential, and R5 patio garden homes. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of this item? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Blake Rice, Barrett Simpson Engineering, 1392 County Road 481 in Casita, Alabama. I'm here tonight to represent the current owners of this property as well as the future developers of this property in rezoning the next phase of Glenbrook subdivision. Excuse me. As some of you are aware, we've been developing this subdivision for some time now, and it has reached its current capacity and are now trying to move into the next piece of undeveloped property. This is a rezoning request for a series of R3 and R5 zoning designations. The R3 and R5 are compatible with what we have been doing in this subdivision in the past. It's a mixture of traditional single-family residential lots as well as some zero lot line patio garden homes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any council member have any questions for Ms. Rice? Thank you. No questions.
Thank you.
Declare the public hearing closed on item number 3. The next item is an ordinance also to zone property located at Rocky Mount Road at Old Farm Lane to R4 multifamily residential. Is anyone here to speak on? Excuse me, before you come. Okay, I'm sorry I missed you, ma'am. Come on, please, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, no, we're still on number 3. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. My name is John Lee Finnegan. I live at 211 Deer Trace Street, and I'm not really against it, but I have some questions before this hearing is closed. I believe this is Phase 4 that is asking for the rezoning. I think it, is that correct?
I don't know if it has the phase on here. Bring your map back up, sir.
Is it the Phase 4? Is that
The rezoning request is for Phase 4A. Right.
4A?
This section right here consisting, I believe, of 127 lots.
I received the sketch plan for the Glenbrook subdivision for phases 4 through 7, and they are going to total, as of now, 1,035 lots. This phase 4 section, it's divided, I believe, into 4 sections, and they're going to be a total of, I believe, 356 homes. Phase 3 was about 77, Phase 2 was about 109, Phase 1 103. Pembroke, I counted about 70, and I don't know the number of homes for River Chase North nor Hollybrook. Plus, they have, there might be a future agenda item about the apartments by Long Lewis for 100 to 150 apartments. And my questions are, it seems the only exit from all those subdivisions is Old Ridge Road, which is a 2-lane road. And I'm wondering when there's going to be a plan in place to either 5-lane that, 4-lane that, or whatever, before these homes are built, or is it going to be after the fact? Because that's a tremendous amount of traffic coming down on that road. Also, they're going to be extending Old Farm Lane, which is going to come out on Old Ridge Road, and I'm wondering when that is expected to be completed. And as I said, I'm not against this, but I'm thinking that some forward thinking needs to be done before we start putting all these homes coming out on one little exit. So does anybody know when the Old Ridge Road widening or whatever is going to be taking place?
I don't think anyone up here can answer that, Mrs. Finnegan, but I'm going to let Mr. Duke do his best to address the plan of this Glenbrook subdivision and the way that they are going about it in the planning department. Thank you.
I'll try to address some of Ms. Finnegan's questions.
I didn't ask that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The primary concern, I believe, is talking about Old Ridge Road and its capacity.
Correct.
And at this point, Old Ridge Road has sufficient capacity for the subdivisions that are being built. Obviously, as we talked about in the office today, there is a plan for realignment of part of that road through this subdivision. So there are plans that are in place. Certainly the Planning Commission is looking at that. Your long-range plan looks at what's going to happen with this area. Certainly your infrastructure plans, wastewater in particular, are looking at the growth in this area and what we expect. So we are hopefully keeping pace and hopefully get out ahead of most of this. And this is the reason we do a sketch plan in the planning department and with the Planning Commission, is so that we have a good idea of what this overall development will look like. So remind me what else you had a question about.
Well, mainly I was looking at all this because it really all folds out and goes to 14.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's, so right now it only has one exit and entrance basically from Old Ridge Road.
Right.
And then with the extension of Old Farm Lane, and I'm just wondering what's the timeline for that? Because that would
Right.
allow another exit.
And unfortunately, I don't have the time frame for Old Farm Lane extension at this point, but I'll be glad to get that for you.
Okay.
It's relatively soon. As you understand, those plans are nearing completion, and as a part of the economic development agreement with that included Long Lewis Ford, the city will make that extension. As far as Old Ridge Road is concerned, it as a 2-lane road with sufficient deceleration lane and left-hand turning lanes at certain points, it has a great deal more capacity than you might expect as a 2-lane road. And it is basically a through street, so it goes all the way through to 31. But I understand where you're coming from. We're definitely, as we always are with transportation projects, playing some catch up.
Thank you, Mr. Duke.
Yes, sir.
Why I brought this up is when we were at the planning committee, people were informing me that at rush hour, going out in the morning and coming back in the evening, it's very, very congested. And since it is only a 2-lane road, I think that's very dangerous. So before we start putting all these homes in, it seems like we would want the infrastructure in before all the traffic hits, thus causing the residents problems on exiting, et cetera, because of the construction. So it just seems like the construction should be done before all the homes are built to flow out into the street. So, like I said, I'm not against it. I was just trying to find out some information. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on Glenbrook? Declare the public hearing closed on Glenbrook. We'll move forward again to ordinance number 4, to zone property located at Rocky Mount Road at Old Farm Lane to R4 multifamily residential. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this?
Yes, I'm Greg Gillen with Larry Speaks and Associates. And on behalf of the Swan family, which is the petitioner, we're requesting that this 32-acre approximately piece of property located at Old Farm Lane and Rocky Mount Road at the northeast corner be considered for an R4 zoning. The purpose is to be able to market the property for a high-density residential mix. Our proposed zoning is consistent with the current land use plan that was adopted by the Planning Commission in 2010. And again, we are consistent with the current plan that the city has at this time. And I'm here to answer any particular questions that you may have. And one thing I wanted to mention is we sent you a letter today requesting that the resolution itself, if you consider it at the main part of the meeting, that we would hold that until a point in time when the annexation process has already taken place, because at this point we are ahead of the annexation process.
The piece of property is not in the city limits right now.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions? No, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Raise, yes, sir. Mr. Simmons.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jerry Simmons, 141 North Chestnut Street, Prattville. Tonight's request for pre-zoning for R4 multifamily residential with a concurrent annexation, which the applicant has 180 days to complete. By the way, as far as a disclaimer, I'm talking to you tonight as a citizen. Even though I sit on your Board of Zoning Adjustment, I have no interest whatsoever. It's 32 acres. The Planning Commission approved it on April 16th, but I want to point out that several of your members are here tonight that would have voted no, but they were absent at the meeting. I also want to point out that even though it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is mixed use transitional, that doesn't mandate that it be zoned R4. It's simply a guideline. So I think that's important to realize. You really don't at this point have a development plan. So you have no specifics as to what this is going to be. If I could give you an analogy, it'd be like me going to the doctor and saying, I got this problem, doc, and the doctor runs some tests. And he says, I got it narrowed from the neck down, but I can't really tell you anymore. Come back in a couple of years and I'll let you know what the problem is. So that's about as specific as what you've got right now, is no development plan. So you really don't know what's the impact. You have no sewers within 1,200 feet. You have no access road design, no traffic signals, no drainage plans, no impact on the school system. You have no agreements or impacts on surrounding properties. And once you grant R4, it's a use by right. By that I mean, once granted, it's pretty much irreversible unless the petitioner petitions you to change the zoning to a different zone. So I'm not aware of any study that shows a compelling reason at this point for apartments. It kind of reminds me of Rochester Hills. Rochester Hills is that subdivision behind Russell Dewitt Center, which recently, you may remember, was 96 apartments. That's sort of the example of zoning down the road. Here we have a big developer that over 10 years ago said to you, if you zone this R4, I'll give you some land to build a city park. And we thought it was a great deal, and we took it, and we found out that the land that was donated was a gully, a drainage gully. Then we found out that the 96 units have one entrance, one exit, and it's through Pecan Ridge. Then we found out that the stub out for the second entrance was supposed to go over by Russell Dewitt Center. Then we realized, wait, the traffic light isn't by Russell Dewitt Center, it's by Applebee's. So now we have one entrance to a 96 unit apartment, which I think is a big safety hazard. The fire department concurs that it is a risk, but the code allows it. So once again, remember that our code, most of it was written back in the 70s. So just because it meets code doesn't always mean it's the best planning. So what I would recommend tonight is you deny R4 at this time, and then if you feel that it's imperative that you annex this into the city, you have to apply a zoning to it. I would recommend FAR, which is Forest, Agricultural, Recreational. That has a requirement of one household per 40,000 square feet, which is approximately a little less than an acre. That would put very low demand on the city until you have time to look at what's called the development plan, assess the impact that it's going to have to the city, and then at that point you can decide whether it merits changing from FAR to a R4 request. But at least you would have the information. Now, as far as agreeing, the applicant would have to agree to change from R4 request to an FAR, and the courts have ruled that that's a significant change, which means you have to go back through the process and you have to re-advertise and hold another public hearing in order to do it. So you wouldn't be able to do that tonight, even if the applicant agreed to it. But I just think I'm not anti-apartments, I'm not anti-R4. What I feel is that you don't have enough information to make wise decisions for something down the road, and Rochester Hills is a perfect example of what can happen when you start zoning down the road kind of thing. So I know I've covered a lot. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Simmons?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Finnegan.
John Lee Finnegan, 211 Deer Trace. I spoke before the Planning Committee on this and voiced my dissent. And let me get my paperwork. One of the things I have a problem with is, from what I understood, this 32 acres, the apartment complex, the high density, if an apartment complex is built, was going to be a minimum of 300 up to 400 units. And you start thinking about the traffic on Rocky Mount Road and Old Farm Lane. One of the things that was in the paper when they were going to be opening up Old Farm Lane, it was stated, in fact, by the mayor that improving Old Farm Lane is good for economic development, but it's also a safety factor. It will improve traffic flow and keep large trucks out of the neighborhoods that are along Fairview Avenue. And I was always under the understanding, even when Old Farm Lane was going to be expanded and widened, that this is where they wanted to route the log trucks, the big trucks, etc. So now we're going to be having these on Old Farm Lane at 45 miles per hour. As Dr. Simmons said, there's no traffic lights or anything of that nature. I was also talking to a gentleman who's a bicyclist, and he says, I'm not going to bicycle along a 45 mile per hour street like that. So anyway, that's another thing. One of the things also that Dr. Simmons brought up is that the sanitary sewer, and in the paper that was presented, it says the City of Prattville sanitary sewer mains do not extend to the subject property. The nearest sanitary sewer main is approximately 1,200 feet north of Old Farm Lane. Sanitary sewer is not present at Rocky Mount. So we have that. It also goes back to Glenbrook. If we're adding all these homes, that's going to fold into 14. Maybe some of these are going to fold into 14, but probably this development and the other ones, which are geared for high density, are going to either come out on Old Farm Lane or the Rocky Mount or Bass Pro, whatever you want to call it. Well, if any of you have been along that strip lately, it's a nightmare. I drive that every Wednesday night, and it's very, very scary, especially for people wanting to get on and off 65 and go into the restaurants. And we're now just going to have a new Jack's built also, which is going to do it. And there's also a little complex being built right on the corner of Bass Pro Lane and Cobb's Ford. Another thing, too, Rocky Mount is very dangerous. It's a 2-lane, it's windy, it's curvy. I go back to Glenbrook. Why not get that road taken care of before you start adding apartments, again, putting traffic on that you're going to have to detour, etc., when the road is starting to be built. I just don't think at this point, as Dr. Simmons said, that we need to approve something for R4, and I will also bring up Rochester Hills because I fought against that, and we saw what happened. That was R4 20-something years ago, and then they just develop it. Who knows when they're going to develop on Old Farm Lane and Rocky Mount. So I really feel that this needs to be held, annex it in, make that decision, do a further traffic study. Oh, that was another thing, too. I received a traffic study from the police department, and I apologize for my messiness, but there was accidents along Cobb's Ford Road. Cobb's Ford was 102 for the last 6 months, 160 for the past year. Old Farm Lane in the past 6 months has had 22, and in the past year, 33. So you can imagine adding 300 to 400 apartment units, how that is going to impact on the accidents, the police department. It's just a very congested area, as is Highway 14. So I would hope that instead of zoning this, put it on hold or zone it, as Dr. Simmons said, and not lock us in to an R4 and that type of development.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Ms. Finnegan? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let us note on this item, each council member, I believe, have a letter. Madam Clerk, do you have one from Larry Speaks and Associates? That the petitioner for this item being considered tonight is requesting it to be held until the property annexation process has been completed. So at the appropriate time, you have the letter, and I have just given you the first line of it, and we'll make a decision as we get to it. With that, public hearing is closed on item number 4.